Hello, BookTube. I've got some mail for you today on an absolutely beautiful start to the weekend. Just a lovely, clear, again, bone dry day. A couple of the alarmist weather forecasters have been saying that there's a tiny chance of a storm next week of some kind or other. It's clearly not going to happen. This is just a bone dry pattern. Uh, a lovely day, a day that started out a little earlier than I would have expected. The cloud that's been hanging over the day is that my little bean, my little Frida bean, is feeling a little poorly. She has a bit of an upset stomach. She politely announced at 4:30 this morning that she needed to go outside rather quickly. Of course, we did, and the minute we got outside, she did something from her rear end that was unspeakable. I don't know where that came from. She's been eating happily. There's been no change in her diet. There's been no surprise additions to her diet. But it doesn't seem to be bothering her much. She's been a little low key for a couple of days, but I don't know right now whether or not she's getting over it or it's getting worse. Right in that cusp period. It's difficult to tell with her because she's a firecracker and in terms of energy and doesn't like to admit when she's feeling poorly. I don't know where she gets that from. but I'm not worried because it's not affecting her appetite. It's not affecting her water. It's not affecting her willingness to play or to walk. It's just, when the person who's dear to you is a little bit off. Even if I didn't get the 4:30 indication along those lines, there haven't been any other indications along those lines today. There's been one bowel movement today that was relatively normal. Certainly not the third-degree assault and battery that happened last night. That happened last night as soon as we got outside. Poor little thing. Naturally, of course, it made me a little melancholy because it reminded me of my girls. Those of you who are new to this channel, a lot of you who are new to this channel, won't remember that I started this channel with different dogs, with a very old pointer and a very old basset hound who'd grown up together. They were at the end of their lives when I made this channel. I didn't really know that. I was hoping that wasn't true, but they were. And we were out all the time, just all the time. In fact, in their last year, maybe 2 years of life, we were out around the clock. They would not go in the house. They didn't want to. It really upset them if they did. I kept assuring them, go right ahead. It's not going to bother me, but it really upset them, and I didn't want to upset them, so whenever they had to go out, we were out all night long, every watch of the night, when the whole neighborhood is given over to raccoons, when there's no traffic, not even streetlights. The streetlights go from red, yellow, green to just flashing yellow. I think that happens at 2 or 3 in the morning, and it stays that way until dawn, when traffic starts to pick back up again. I got to know all of those forsaken hours with my girls, and I was reminded of that last night, but that's not what this is. So a beautiful day, and it hasn't really slowed us down. We've still managed to, she's still up for walks that we take. And there have been 1 or 2 little things behind the scenes as well, not just Frida. Frida's not behind the scenes. She's right front and center in the scene. But there's a feeling, I think I mentioned this in an earlier video, I'm getting a feeling. I have an old friend who keeps contacting me, seems to, where are you, out of the blue, how things going, remember so-and-so, whatever happened to so-and-so. I don't know about that. I don't know. I'm not looking to give Taurus in the mouth. Of course, it's wonderful to hear from anybody. But I tend to do my best friendships with young friends. Older friends, the minute an older friend, not the minute, but once an older friend is convincingly boring, once they have decided to stop thinking and just become their own routines, they're of no more interest to me, really. I mean, I know that sounds mercenary, and I will, of course, take their Christmas cards and, email with them, maybe meet once a year or once every 10 years or something like that, but it's not hail and well met. I don't know what's going on there. My spidey sense is telling me that something is going on, and I don't know what it is. I don't know what it is. All the alternatives I can come up with won't work in one way or another. If this old friend, for instance, is considering me for a job, he's in a position to hire me for a particular line of work that he and I both know really well, but I'm not going to go to a job. I'm not going to leave Frida and go to a job all day long, especially a job that routinely clocks in 15-hour days. I can't see myself doing that, no matter how enjoyable it would be. And a lot of the other alternatives are equally unlikely. So anyway, that's just a festive vagueness. Let's look at all of these packages and see what we have. And the mail stack here ends with an enormous box. A bigger box than the last two enormous boxes. And I don't understand that. I was waiting for 2 boxes, and I got them both. I was waiting for 2 T's. William Howard Taft, and I got it. A 2-volume account of the Taft court. Its decisions, its controversies, its personalities. I have been living in those books, just living in them. And also a 4-volume new box set of Tolkien. I have my 2 T's. Those are, a lot of you were suggesting all sorts of other T's. And the 2 T's that are most likely other than those, is Tolstoy and Trajan, the Roman Emperor Trajan. But there's nothing. There's nothing that could be either one of them. But we'll save that for last. We'll look at all the rest of this first, and see what we have here. See if there's anything really of interest, maybe squeal-worthy. I doubt very much that the. What is this? I doubt very much that the. Is this actually for me? Yeah, it is. I doubt very much that this box will be squeal-worthy. I wondered if this was actually for me, because the envelope didn't look like it was from a publisher. And it's not from a publisher. It's from one of you. One of you has broken rule number 1. Rule number 1 on this channel for you newcomers is don't send me a book. Don't do it. Just don't do it. No matter how good your intentions are, I'm thrilled. I'm honored by your intentions. It won't work. You can hedge your bets on rule number 1 if you're sure that I don't have a book and that I really want one. And one of you found this, The Common Reader, first and second series by Virginia Woolf in 1 volume. I did Bookshelf Essentials. By the way, I know a lot of you have been mentioning to me that I have not done a Bookshelf Essentials in a while. I know that. I will definitely rectify that in the coming week. But I had the 2 volumes, and I've had the 2 volumes forever. I had the 2-volume mass market paperbacks, I had the 2-volume trade paperbacks, I had 2-volume annotated trade paperbacks, and I mentioned that I'd love to see them in 1 volume. One of you actually sent me that. Well, that was very nice. That was very nice. It is technically a violation of rule number 1, but we'll let it go because I really did want it. Thank you very much. Let's see what this next one is. This next one is for a publisher, so don't have to worry about that. This comes out in June. So I don't have to worry about that either. I'm not going to read any June books in February. This is from the folks at Grove Atlantic. This is going to be a $28 hardcover. This is a novel by Henry Wise called Holy City. And it's his debut. How wonderful. It's Henry Wise's debut. It's a thriller about a deputy sheriff who must work alongside an unpredictable private detective after he finds himself on the outs from his sheriff's department over his unwillingness to look the other way when an innocent man is arrested for murder. After a decade of exile precipitated by the tragic death of his mother, Will Seams returns home from Richmond to rural southern Virginia, taking a job as a deputy sheriff in a landscape given way to crime and defeat. Impoverished and abandoned, this remote land of tobacco plantations, raised forest, and boarded-up homes seems stuck in the past, in a state that is trying to forget its complex history and move on. Will's effort to go about his life are wrecked when a mysterious, brutal homicide claims the life of an old friend, Tom Janders, forcing Will to face the true impetus of his return, not to honor his mother's memory, but to pay a debt to a black friend who, in an act of selfless courage years ago, protected Will and suffered permanent disfigurement for it. Meanwhile, a man Will knows to be innocent is arrested for Tom's murder, and despite Will's pleas, his boss seems all too content to wrap up the case and move on. Will must weigh his personal guilt against his public duty when the local black community hires Benico Watts, an unpredictable private detective from Richmond, to help him find the real killer. It would seem an ideal pairing. She has experience, along with plenty of sand, and Will is privy to the details of the case. But it doesn't take long for either to realize they much prefer to operate alone. Well, this is a question that's come up. It's come up for me, not least because I often consider writing mystery fiction for any NaNoWriMo event or anything like that. The question that comes up is the details of the case. What can private detectives actually do in the 21st century when the American police system has become so militarized? when you can be arrested for interfering with a case if you so much as examine it. I've often wondered when I was contemplating writing a private eye series of my own. I wondered, well, how would that work? How are they even going to know anything about what the cops found? You're not allowed on the scene. Can't interview anybody. In most parts of America, if you look funny at a cop, you can be shot 50 times. He won't even be suspended from his desk, much less lose his pension, much less go to jail. It no longer is believable that a private investigator could solve a murder, at least in an American setting, especially in the Deep South. So this neatly solves that. The private investigator will be working with someone who is on the outs with the police force, but still a member. Interesting. It sounds like an impressive debut. It sounds like a lot to bite off for a debut novel. I wonder if this tells me anything about the debut author. Maybe I don't want to know. Henry Wise is a graduate of the Virginia Military Institute and the University of Mississippi MFA program. And his work has appeared in a whole bunch of places, and this is his first novel. The University of Mississippi has a very good MFA program. Don't I remember that correctly? Isn't Mississippi really good? I could be having that wrong. Baby, we have a feng shui problem here. Where are we going to put these things? I don't want to bury you if you're feeling bad. No, so baby girl, I'm feeling bad. Oh, my little raccoon is feeling bad. All right, let's move on here. I gotta confess to a morbid curiosity with the box. The box is huge, but we'll save that for last. Been happening since the first videos I made. These packages, I swear, these cardboard packages don't need to be this difficult. Most of the stuff that goes in these things could go in a manila envelope. Let's just get that out of the way. Let's see. Oh, okay. This is a finished copy coming out February? Yes? No, April. 2nd of April. Something we've seen already. This will be a $25 hardcover coming out in the 2nd of April. This is by John Shen Yen Ni and S.J. Rosen, and it's called The Murder of Mr. Ma. A stunning, swashbuckling series opener by a powerhouse duo of authors. It's a Sherlockian pastiche with elements of traditional Chinese fiction that reads comfortingly familiar while highlighting real historical aspects of Chinese immigrant community in post-World War I London. Perfect for March Mystery Madness, which is right around the corner. And since it's an April release, I can wait until March to read it. London, 1924. When shy academic Lao She meets the larger-than-life Judge D. Ren Ji, his life abruptly turns from books and lectures to daring chases and narrow escapes. D has come to London to investigate the murder of a man he'd known during World War I when serving with the Chinese Labor Corps. No sooner has D interviewed the grieving widow than another dead body turns up. Then another. All Chinese victims stabbed to death with a butterfly sword. Will D and Lao be able to connect the threads of the murders, or are they the next in line as victims? Okay, sounds like a classic murder mystery. Fantastic. All right, so that's early April, and it has the added attraction of being the first in the series. That's good. All right, let's move on here. Got a couple of smaller boxes. These cardboard kinds that just unfold. What is this? This is from the University of Chicago. Oh, gross. My hands have touched an invoice. No interest in an invoice. Let's move on to the book itself. All right, this is a May release. This is by Lee Allen Dugatkin. This is called I don't have a cover on this thing. This is just a raw ARC. The Well-Connected Animal. Social networks and the wondrous complexity of animal societies. No reason to show you this. This isn't what it will look like. I guess maybe the cover art isn't ready, or maybe it's only online. This is an engaging exploration of the wondrous social webs that permeate life in animal societies around the world. It's all about who you know. Whether vampire bats sharing blood meals for survival, field crickets remembering champion fighters, macaque monkeys forming grooming packs after a deadly hurricane, or great tit birds learning the best way to steal milk, it pays to be well connected. In this tour of the animal kingdom, evolutionary biologist Lee Allen Dugatkin reveals a new field of study, uncovering social networks that existed long before the dawn of human social media. The author excessively describes the latest findings from animal behavior, evolution, computer science, psychology, anthropology, genetics, and neurobiology. There's something missing from that list, something rather conspicuous, and incorporates interviews and insights from researchers that he finds swimming with manta rays, avoiding pigeon poop, and stopping monkeys from stealing iPads. With the author as our guide, we investigate social networks in giraffes, elephants, kangaroos, Tasmanian devils, whales, bats, and more. Okay, well, the cover copy goes out of its way to avoid using the word language. But of course, a social network cannot have, the kind of social networks that are described here cannot be mere instinct. They cannot be animals acting like biological wind-up toys. They require language. The teaching of language, the learning of language, the transmission of language. And once upon a time, I'm old enough to remember it, it was that all other animals, that beasts abstract not. That humans speak. Humans have language and no other animals do. So maybe the book will be full. The book has to be full of languages. You can't. The things that are being described here are first of all, they're the tip of the iceberg. Believe you me, these social networks, this kind of language happens in your household if you have more than one non-human animal in your household. So who is the author? He's an evolutionary biologist and historian of science in the Department of Biology at the University of Louisville. And among his many books, he is co-author of How to Tame a Fox and Build a Dog. I remember that book, don't I? I don't think I ever reviewed it. Didn't Open Letters run a review of How to Tame a Fox and Build a Dog? By somebody? Well, I will do the same thing that I urge you to do. If you're ever curious, look up my name and then the title of the book and maybe the author. Put that in a Google search bar. That'll get you as close to it as you can. Interesting. Okay. Non-human animals, social networks. Wonderful. It's won't do anything. It won't change much. I mean, if you would think that undergirding all of these books is the acknowledgement that animals have language. Not just a kind of language, not just a primitive instinct language, but an actual language. That they learn how to speak it, they learn how to transmit it, they can teach it to animals who aren't part of their species, and they can remember what it means. You would think that the more books popularized that, which is an absolute fact, that is an absolute fact. You would think that the more books that would popularize that, the more tensions would arise with those veal cutlets that you're defrosting for tonight. You'd think that those two things couldn't live together, but so far they have proven that they can. Let's see what we have here. Oh wow! Oh my! Okay. Well, I only had an invoice for this thing again, not anything to tell you, specifically about the book. This looks like a finished copy, but it's in paperback. So is this a reprint? No, it's 2024. Okay, well, I'll have to look into it. Maybe it's a paperback original. All books should be. All new releases should be paperback originals to spare you at least a little money if you want to actually buy it instead of waiting 6 months for it online at the library. All paperbacks should be. I mean, take a new release. Well, let's take this thing. It sounds very good, but this is a new hardcover. This thing is $26, almost $30. It'll be $30 with tax here in America. So you go into a bookstore, you didn't know this existed, or maybe you've heard about it only on this channel. That's not much. You haven't done any research about it. You think you might like it, but it's 80% a gamble. Well, you can spend $30 on a gamble? No, you're not. For something that's going to take you 2 hours to read and that you're never going to reread? No, you're not going to do that. You're just not. Whereas you would do it if this same book were $10. You would do it. And you probably wouldn't regret it. You probably wouldn't. We all did that. Those of us of a certain age, those of us who matured in the 20th century instead of the 21st, remember when you could go into a bookstore and not mortgage the house to do it. Anyway, this is Columbia University Press, and university presses are bad about putting prices on their finished copies. This doesn't have a price on it, but it looks really interesting. This is by Larry Heinzerling and Randy Herschaff, with assistance by Ann Cooper. And it is called Newshawks in Berlin, the Associated Press in Nazi Germany. Some people who might have been in that crowded newsroom up at the top there decided to cash in their commission to write about Nazis in favor of putting on boots and killing them. But not a lot of people didn't. Look at that. Wow, that is an old-style newsroom. Are there even typewriters visible in here? Yeah, there's one. There's one typewriter visible. Let's see. Let's see what this is. Oh, it's all blurbs on the back. Boy, I wonder if this is a reprint. I wonder if this came out last year anyway, but it says 2024. It has all the hallmarks of something that is the paperback reprint of something that came out last year, but I'm not seeing that. Well, I don't have anything. I don't have anything here except blurbs. Do we have a blurb by somebody that we know? Maybe we just Steve Call. Steve Call, the author, who's terrific. What does he say about newshawks in Berlin? It's a powerful historical investigation that unpacks the ethical choices and hard realities of eyewitness reporting under a dictatorship. In writing that is nuanced and sophisticated and yet as clear and readable as an AP dispatch, the authors enlarge our understanding of American news in the Nazi era while providing vital lessons for journalists today. Vital and ignored lessons for journalists today, since all of mainstream media, almost without exception, is busily at the task of feathering their own nest and hedging their own bets in case a fascist power comes to control the country. If I lie about you to our millions and millions of viewers and listeners, will you spare my family? Will you let me keep the pool? My task, the job that I signed on for, informing the public, is less important to me than keeping the pool. Can I keep the pool? If I do that, then I'll say, well, we got to hear both sides of whether or not a fascist takeover of the United States government is good. So I don't know that those lessons would be listened to. It would be bitter but not unbelievable to read a book like this and see the 1930s version of Chuck Todd both siding the Nazis. That would not be unbelievable. That happens in the American mainstream press literally every day. A few fugitive voices calling a spade, knowing that there is now an extremely high likelihood that they will be put against a wall in 2025 and shot for it. But those are only a few voices. And unfortunately, because it's only a few voices, that reality has not broken through to America. I'd be willing to bet that 8 Americans out of 10 don't have any conception at all of how close the country is to people being put against walls and shot. I'd be willing to bet that's true. And the reason that is true is because the press has failed. The mainstream press has failed. In 3 weeks ago, in the news cycle, I look at it all the time, so I have an endless number of examples. But one will do 3 weeks ago or so, maybe a month ago. The news cycle in the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, the Washington Post, the Louisville Dispatch, anywhere you want to go, anywhere in the mainstream American press, had, I think, 10 different articles and think pieces on Joe Biden's mental decline, on Joe Biden's physical fragility, on how Joe Biden can't do the job. What are they hiding? Why does he have no press conferences? Or did he seem like himself in that last heavily parsed speech that we watched? At the exact same time that story was going everywhere, just to every stupid mouthpiece on any one of these shows, Donald Trump, in front of a crowd in New Hampshire, said he won the 2020 election in a 50-state landslide. Which is the equivalent of him getting up in front of a crowd during the primary season and saying he is Napoleon Bonaparte. That is absolutely insane. That is not Joe Biden getting the name of a state leader mixed up with the name of another state leader. That's a presidential candidate who is reviled, saying he won the 2020 election in a 50-state landslide. Not only did the press not report that, but no reporters went to anybody else. No reporters went to every Republican on Capitol Hill and said, your God just said he won the 2020 election in a 50-state landslide. Surely even you are not going to agree with that. Are you willing to say publicly that he's wrong? The news story would not be how many Republicans would say that he was wrong. The news story would be that none of them would say that he was wrong. None of them would answer that question. So your religious leader and your prohibitive nominee for the office of President of the United States just got up in front of a crowd of people in Windham, New Hampshire or wherever and said he was Napoleon Bonaparte. Do you agree with that or don't you? The press didn't even ask the question. And they did not report. I think I saw that mention of that claim once. You know him. You know him. You know what he's like. Yeah, he's clinically insane. I can say beyond a shadow of a doubt that Donald Trump did not win Massachusetts in 2020. But anyway, I would ordinarily apologize for going on a rant, but a book about AP journalists in Nazi Germany. If that's not going to set me off on a rant, I don't know what is. I'm only human. But anyway, now we're on to the box. And it's huge. I can't imagine what this is. It's heavily taped. I hope it's not from one of you. Because publishers usually don't do this kind of a job with taping. I'm just going to use brute force to rip it apart here. And you know, you won't mention anything about the brute force any more than you'll mention that I said that I was Hadrian, the Roman Emperor Hadrian, a presidential candidate, saying to a cheering crowd that he won the 2020 election in a 50-state landslide. Not only an easily disprovable lie, but also a howling delusion. It's just that would have been banner headlines. The Times would never have let that alone 30 years ago. Some of you are very, very old. Some of you are very, very old. Some of you will remember a press conference in which President Ford said that he wasn't aware of any Russian influence in East Germany. They had a wall. They had tanks. There was barbed wire. It was absolute common knowledge. The Times didn't leave that alone for a solid month. Here, a presidential nominee says that he won a hotly contested election that he lost by a wide margin in a 50-state landslide. No one even mentions it. No one even talks about it. Anyway, I'm ranting about it again. Let's see what's in this box. Is it from one of you? What is in this box? Ooh. Could this be what I think it is? Oh, man. It is what I think it is. I wasn't sure this would happen. Wow. Okay. Okay, great. Let's put that aside. This... Oh, I can't believe this. How much fun. This is a box of books from Casemate Publishing. Casemate does military history. They span the spectrum of all the different time periods, but they specialize in granular military history. Just fantastic. They don't tend to do the big, broad, battles of the Atlantic or anything like that. Instead, they will hunker down on one encounter, one specific battle, one specific field. Their books are great. I am always tempted when I see them in the wild used. All right, well, let's go through these. This first one is from Casemate Illustrated. They do a line of these things. They're gorgeous. For the military history buff, they are gorgeous. They have these, the French flaps are really solid binding, and they are full of pictures and illustrations, just full. So you get black and white illustrations, but you also get black and white photos, but you also get custom illustrations to show what the book is actually talking about. This one is by Ian Baxter, and it is the Vistula Oder Offensive, the Soviet destruction of the German Army Group A in 1945. So you see what I mean? This is not Germany invades the Soviet Union. This is one particular conflict in that larger theater. The Vistula Oder Offensive was a massive Soviet army operation in the Eastern Front, which was launched on the 12th of January 1945 and paved the way for the Battle of Berlin. Its main objective was a major advance from the River Vistula to the River Oder, bringing the Soviet forces within 50 miles of the gates of Berlin. The offensive faced a German defensive line east of Warsaw. These 450,000 German troops were outmatched 3-1 by the Soviet forces. Yes, right, but a lot of the Soviet forces had garden rakes. So don't get too complacent. The Soviets didn't. The Red Army assault began with what would be a devastating 3 weeks for the German forces of Army Group A. German attempts to hold their lines and avoid being sucked into a maelstrom of destruction were unsuccessful. Army Group A would collapse almost all the way back to Berlin, ending the Third Reich's desperate efforts to cling onto land captured in Poland 5 years earlier and stem enemy forces spilling over into Germany and threatening Berlin. The battle saw some 295,000 soldiers killed and 147,000 captured, as well as thousands of tanks, artillery, and machine guns destroyed. Within 2 months of the offensive, the Battle of Berlin was launched. So this is that, and heavily illustrated. So you don't get a lot of text with this, but it's heavily illustrated. Wonderful. Let's see what else is in this box of goodies. Well, this has been my week for getting boxes of goodies. Okay, what have we got here? Alrighty, very good. So all these have sheets with them? Yes, they do. Fantastic. All right, so this one is, this must be some sort of care package. Because this is a paperback release or something that came out in 2022. So this one, I didn't really check about the Vistula thing, but this would not really be reviewable. This, I think, is more just a goodwill gesture. I don't think I've been on Casemate's mailing list, and I think I now resoundingly am. This is by Robert Sutton, and it is called Nazis on the Potomac, the top secret intelligence operation that helped win World War II. A revised and disbanded edition. Now a green open space enjoyed by residents, Fort Hunt, Virginia, about 15 miles south of Washington, D.C., was the site of one of the highest-level clandestine operations during World War II. Shortly after the United States entered World War II, the U.S. military realized that it had to work on exploiting any advantages it might gain on the Axis powers. One part of these endeavors was to establish a secret facility not too close, but also not too far from the Pentagon, which would interrogate and eavesdrop on the highest-level Nazi prisoners and also translate and analyze captured German war documents. That complex was established at Fort Hunt, known by the code name P.O. Box 1142. The American servicemen who interrogated German prisoners or translated captured German documents were young, bright, hardworking, and absolutely dedicated to their work. Many of them were Jews who had escaped from Nazi Germany as children. Some had come to America with their parents, others had escaped alone, but their experiences and those that they had been forced to leave behind meant that they all had personal motivations to do whatever they could to defeat Nazi Germany. Lucky thing that across the Potomac from them was not Marjorie Taylor Greene. Lucky thing. Blathering on in the well of the Senate or in Congress about, how helping the Nazis helps Joe Biden. They were perfect for the difficult and complex job at hand. They never used corporal punishment in interrogations of German soldiers, but developed and deployed dozens of tricks to gain information. Okay, well, that is going to be fascinating to read. I don't think I encountered this. This is also heavily illustrated all throughout. I don't think I encountered it when it first came out, but I don't know that I'm going to be able to review it. But that's not going to be true for everything in here. Like, for instance, this thing right here. I believe this is a brand new release. Is that right? Are you a new release? Yeah, February 15th. So we're not even there yet. This comes out next Tuesday. This is by Michael Cook and Robert Conlon, and it is Life and Death at Abbey Gate, the Fall of Afghanistan and Operations to Save Our Allies. See what I mean? It's not just World War II. They excel at World War II, but it's not just that. This is a lovely cover. Look at that. As the American government began a disastrous mass evacuation of its Afghan allies, a group of American veterans saw the writing on the wall. The people who had supported them on the ground over the past 2 decades were going to be left behind. Instead of watching on the sideline, they sprang into action. The effort became known nationally as #DigitalDunkirk, in reference to the civilian aspect of the evacuation of the soldiers of the beaches of Dunkirk in 1940. As America's last days in Afghanistan came to a chaotic end, an ad hoc group of veterans, intelligence assets, and legislative aides undertook an extraordinary mission to honor the U.S. battlefield creed to leave no comrade behind. Relying on cell phones and satellites as their weapons, they worked feverishly around the clock to help evacuate as many Afghans who had supported U.S. troops over the past 20 years as possible. As the desperate mass of Afghans tried to flee brutal Taliban rule, Marines of the 2nd Battalion, 1st Marines, worked at Hamid Karzai International Airport's Abbey Gate in conditions that brought combat-hardened veterans to tears. After an ISIS suicide bomber detonated his S-vest, killing 13 U.S. service members, operations came to a halt. Okay, well, Casemate doesn't often pop up on the radar of mainstream reviewers. They have a fanatic following. You look at their lists all the time and see, oh, that book I would really read, that book I would really read. This one, though, I think I don't know what their marketing team is like, but this could work in bookstores. This could get actual mainstream coverage. Fantastic. All right. Well, that actually becomes a priority because I don't know how many of these things will, but that becomes a priority. That's something I could actually review. And what is this next one? Oh, all of these have sheets with them. That's fantastic. All right. This one comes out in March. This is also a new release. This is by Commander Hamilton McWhorter III, a U.S. Navy retired, and Lieutenant Colonel J. Stout, U.S. Marine Corps retired. This is the first Hellcat ace. Although he objected to being characterized as such, Hamilton McWhorter III's service to family and country make him a standout among America's greatest generation. A Georgia native whose family roots date from that region's settlement during the 1700s, Mac McWhorter was a naval aviation cadet undergoing training when Pearl Harbor was attacked by Japan on December 7, 1941. After earning his wings of gold in early 1942, Ensign McWhorter was trained as a fighter pilot in the robust but technologically outmoded F-4 Wildcat. Initially assigned to VF-9, a fiercely spirited and hard-playing fighter squadron, he saw first combat in November 1942 against Vichy France forces in North Africa. So he's one of the writers. He's got a co-writer to help him with his story. After returning to the United States, VF-9 became the first unit to convert to the new Grumman F-6F Hellcat. That was the fighter the U.S. Navy would use to crush Japanese air power during the long offensive from the Southwest Pacific to the shores of Japan. From mid-1943, Hamilton McWhorter was constantly engaged in an unforgiving and deadly aerial warfare that characterized the battles against Imperial Japan. His fifth aerial victory in November of 1943 off Tarawa Atoll made him the first ace in the Hellcat, and 7 subsequent victories ensured his place in the annals of air-to-air combat. His combat service from the beginning of the war to the last campaign off the shores of Okinawa makes his story a must-read for the serious student of Pacific Air War. He retired from the Navy as a commander in 1969, and he died in 2008. And this is the kind of thing that Casemate contributes that is amazing. They contribute things that are going to actually further the historical record. This is one of them. I mean, this is a priceless first-hand document. I don't know how much biography will be in here, but that's all right. That's a new release as well. Let's keep going. We'll let this go long. It's fine by me. If this is a box of new books, that's wonderful. Let's see what this next one is. Are you also a new release? Yes, you are. Mid-February. This is by Marie Louise Dilks, edited by Virginia Dilks, and this is Strong in Will, working for the American Embassy in Paris during the Nazi occupation. Very similar to the book that we got about AP in Nazi-occupied Germany. This comes out in mid-February. Marie-Louise Dilk's astute observations of life in Paris during World War II are written from the unique perspective of the receptionist for the American Embassy. The embassy was the first or last resort for many caught up in the chaos of wars, and hers was the first face they would see as they walked through the grand doors. She takes us from the conquest and occupation of Paris by the German forces, but includes the wartime journey of the American consulate in Paris, from Paris to Lisbon, to Lyon, Bern, and back to Paris. She ends with the triumphant return of members of the American Embassy staff after the Allies forced the German army out of Paris, and the reestablishment of the American Embassy in Paris. And again, that is firsthand. This document did not exist before, except in reminiscences. That's incredible. Let's move on. Let's keep going. What is this next one? Oh, this is so nice of the folks at Casemate. I'm going to have to send them an appreciative letter. Okay, this one came out in late January, so still new. This is by Georg Steiger. Lyndon Leons translates, and the editor is Matthias Strone. Not a long thing at all. It's 192 pages. This is Anzio Nettuno, a battle of leadership mistakes. Thin little thing. This is what I think of when I think of Casemate, is really pointillist military history studies. So, this channel, not everything in here is going to be of interest to the general interest reader. You're going to have to be interested in military history to read most of these things. You'll notice whoever packed this box was aware of that. There is a balance here. There are books here that you could just be interested in history and read. But something like this, or a couple of the others that we've seen, here you're going to want to know your maps. You're going to want to know the various fields. Okay, this book was written in 1962. It's a detailed account of the German reaction to the Allied landings at Anzio in January of 1944. The Allies' amphibious operation, codenamed Shingle, was launched in late January 1944. It was opposed by German forces in the area of Anzio and Nettuno. Success depended on the element of surprise and the speed with which the invaders could bring up strength and move inland. This was understood by General Mark Clark, commander of the U.S. Fifth Army, but not fully understood by his subordinate commanders. This German account focuses on the landing at Anzio as it was the only one that failed to achieve its objective of smashing the German defensive and achieving operational freedom of movement. The battle lasted over 6 weeks, with mistakes made by leadership on both sides, and consequently also great sacrifice by soldiers on both sides. That's one way to put it. But the operation was not a German success either, and attempts to prevent a creation of a strong bridgehead failed. Ultimately, the Allies would reach Rome, and they applied lessons from this battle to facilitate the success of Overlord, launched 5 months later. While not complete, as the author did not have access to some of the war diaries of the higher levels of German command, this is still one of the best German accounts of Operation Shingle, and is here translated into English for the first time. Just incredible. I know that this is, some of you are cross-eyed by now, but this is catnip to someone like me. Just absolute catnip. Let's keep going. We have a few more to go here. Looks like all the ones that have actual pub sheets are relatively new releases. Yeah, this comes out at the end of February. This isn't out yet. Let's see here. What have we got here? Okay. All right. This is by James Webb. This is going to be a $50 hardcover. It's Generals and Admirals of the Third Reich for Country or Führer, Volume 1, A to G. So this is going to be sequential biographies of those generals and admirals, but you're only going to get the ones whose surnames start with A to G. This is part of, obviously, I would imagine, a 3-volume set. Description, let's see here. This 3-volume set offers concise biographical information for over 5,000 generals and admirals of the Reich. Covers all branches of service, ordered alphabetically, and provides a brief, though scholarly, overview of each individual, including personal details and dates for all attached to units, medals, and awarded, offering a readily accessible go-to reference work for all World War II researchers and historians. Exactly what this is. It has no higher aspirations than that. This does not, Generals and Admirals of the Reich, A to G, does not have any aspirations to be reviewed in the New York Times. This is for historians to have on their shelves. Or in your research library. If you have a military history research library, you are on a first name basis with Casemate, I guarantee it. Okay, so this comes out in at the end of the month. Of course, a couple of these things, I'm automatically, see, this is what you get. You get biographical information, just rapid fire. And of course, the reviewer in me is automatically wondering about how to review some of these things. You get a new book, you immediately start your brain, if your brain is damaged by a long time reviewing books, you immediately start turning it around for angles. What are the angles that you can use to review this thing? Some things, even me, even after this long in the game, some things I look at them and think, all right, that can't really be reviewed, not for a general readership. I'm sure it could be reviewed for a military history magazine, but I don't know what I could do with this. This is encyclopedic, it's alphabetical, it's very much connected with the records, so it will be intentionally avoiding any kind of literary flair. Well, I don't know. I don't know. I'll have to see. I will certainly be reading all of these things. Alrighty, this looks like another new release. I've only got one more book left in this box, so apparently I'm not going to get the other volumes in Generals and Admirals of the Third Reich. I only recognize one of the men on this cover. On the top there, of that trio. I only recognize one. So this is going to get into some fairly detailed waters. All right, this one comes out in March, so this is a long way off. This is by Peter Harmson, and it is titled Bernhard Sindberg, The Schindler of Nanjing. Interesting. In December 1937, the Chinese capital Nanjing falls, and the Japanese army unleashes an orgy of torture, murder, and rape. Don't miss, if you're interested in the subject, don't miss the book called The Rape of Nanking. It's unbelievably brutal reading, but necessary. Over the course of 6 weeks, hundreds of thousands of civilians and prisoners of war are killed. At the very outset of the hostilities, Danish supervisor at a cement plant just outside of the city, 26-year-old Bernhard Arp Sindberg, opens the factory gates and welcomes in 10,000 Chinese civilians to safety, beyond the reach of the bloodthirsty Japanese. He becomes an Asian equivalent of Oskar Schindler, the savior of Jews in the European Holocaust. This biography follows him from his childhood in the old Viking city of Aarhus to his first adventures as a sailor and a foreign legionnaire to the dramatic 101 days as a rescuer of thousands of helpless men, women, and children in the darkest hour of the Sino-Japanese War. It describes how after his remarkable incident, he receded back into obscurity, spending decades more at sea and becoming a naturalized American citizen before dying of old age in Los Angeles in 1983. Completely unrecognized. In this respect, too, there is an obvious parallel with Schindler, who only attained posthumous fame. Okay, lots and lots of primary sources. This guy's never had a biography before, I'm sure. Certainly not in English. Don't know. I think the Afghan evacuation book still has the highest likelihood of getting any kind of mainstream attention. And then we'll do this last one, and then we'll be done. I'm sorry this went long. This is a whole box of books. You have to write to Casemate and thank them. All right, this comes out. This also has not come out. This comes out on February 29th because this is a leap year. This is by Kenneth White, and it is called The Battle of Bong Son, Operation Masher/White Wing, 1966. The start of large-scale search and destroy operations in the Vietnam War. Very good. We don't get anywhere near as much a mainstream Vietnam War history in any publication season as we should. Nowhere near as much. And where is the gigantic book? A gigantic narrative history that might be a little bit less a little bit less easy than Max Hastings. Where is that? We get 2 or 3 of those for World War I or World War II every single month, every single year. Where is that for Vietnam? And let's not even talk about the Korean War. Okay, so this comes out at the end of the month. This is not out yet. Let's see here. Operation Masher White Wing targeted the regiments of the North Vietnamese Army Sao Vang Division, operating in the Bong Son area in northeast Binh Dinh province in central South Vietnam. The operation started on January 24, 1966, immediately after the Vietnamese New Year, and ended 6 weeks later. It was led by newly promoted Colonel Harold Moore, who as a lieutenant colonel commanded the 1st Battalion, 7th Cavalry in the Battle of Landing Zone X-Ray in the La Drang Valley 2 months earlier. In 41 days of sustained fighting, the 1st Cavalry battled each of the 3 regiments of the Sao Vang Division, resulting in enemy losses of more than 3,000 killed in action. This came at a cost of 199 Americans killed on the battlefield and 46 more who died in the crash of a U.S. Air Force C-123 aircraft en route to the battlefield, making it one of the deadliest battles of the entire Vietnam War. Yeah, okay. All right. You're talking Sao Vang. You're talking... Okay. Enemy losses of 3,000 killed in action, 199 American casualties. It's the third group. Civilians. Be nice. I'm sure this book will mention them. This operation was a success. The 1st Cavalry demonstrated that it had the firepower, mobility, and leadership to find the enemy and deliver a severe blow to it in terms of personnel and equipment losses and enforced evacuation from formerly secure base areas, seemingly proving the value of search and destroy strategy. A lot of euphemisms piling up here. However, within a few weeks, intelligence report indicated that North Vietnamese soldiers were returning to the Bong Son area in small groups. By late April, the division was back in the area in force. Operation Masher/White Wing proved to be the start of a very long and deadly struggle between the 1st Cavalry and North Vietnamese for control of the Binh Dinh province. Multiple search and destroy operations eventually resulted in more than 9,000 enemy killed in action and 2,358 enemy detained, with friendly losses of more than 1,200 killed in action. Okay, all right. All right. Well, okay, the author, I don't know the author's credentials at all, but I'm sure that he's aware of what a lot of these enlisted men considered to be the thing that you were searching and destroying. It wasn't always the enemy. I'm a little bit concerned that no other, to use the odious phrase collateral damage is being mentioned here, but it will be in the book. I guarantee it will be in the book. While the operation demonstrated that search and destroy operations were very effective at the tactical level, oh my God. Now I'm wondering if this author was alive during the time, or is this author young? We'll look and see. Oh my God. Very effective at the tactical level. Without a high-level strategy to stop the unabated flow of fresh communist troops and supplies into South Vietnam, it wasn't clear just how they contributed to overall victory. At the start of 1968, General Westmoreland ordered the 1st Cavalry to terminate its operations in the Bong Son area, bringing the battle to a close. Okay, let's find out about the author. He served 18 months in Vietnam as an infantryman in the 1st Cavalry Division. He was in a long-range reconnaissance patrol unit. So he saw the worst of the worst. Okay. He was a member of the 6-man recon team that supported the brigades of the division in the Bong Son area by searching out and locating enemy troop encampments, reporting enemy movements, and directing firepower at targets of opportunity. Oh my God. Oh my God. Okay. He lives in Fairfax, Virginia. So he's still alive. Targets of opportunity. Okay. All right. Well, all of the instincts that such language provokes in me are tinglings in my fingertips to haul out a manual typewriter and do 500 words before deadline, which is at 5, for the editorial page, for the op-ed column. Targets of opportunity would have sent me away from dinner at Devine's. It would have sent me straight to a manual typewriter. Just that phrase alone would have done it. But this book is actual fodder for review. This comes out at the end of the month. So there you go. Sorry, this was a long mail haul because I got a gigantic box of goodies from Casemate. How wonderful. So we have The Battle of Bong Son. No popular history that I know of until now. Certainly not by somebody who knows exactly what he's talking about. The Schindler of Nanjing. How wonderful. Generals and Apples of the Third Reich, a reference volume, so just A to G. Anzio Nettuno, a previously untranslated early account. Strong in Will, working for the embassy in Nazi Germany, with the quote obviously being a reference to Tennyson. The first Hellcat Ace, book that the author, it sounds like the author would probably not have wanted this to show up while he was alive. Life and Death at Abbey Gate, by Mikhail Cook and Robert Conlon. This has distinct review potential of all this thing. I thought we'd maybe exceed it, but I don't think we did. Nazis on the Potomac, in an older book, but I'll have to check and see its provenance, why it's being reprinted. A Casemate illustrated volume. There's a whole series of these. They're invaluable for seeing what you're looking at, for seeing what you're reading about in book after book after book. They're invaluable. Then we have Newshawks in Berlin, probably the first thing I will read from this pile. The Murder of Mr. Ma, a classic Sherlockian or Judge D murder mystery. The Well-Connected Animal, about animal social networks, non-human animals. Holy City, police procedural thriller, Southern detective story that's a debut, and A Gift from One of You. The Common Readers. The Common Reader, first and second series. How wonderfully nice of you to do. Sorry for the length of the mail haul. This is a bit excessive even for me. This is Saturday, and it's late on Saturday, so I don't imagine that I'm going to get anything tomorrow on Sunday, much less another box. I can't imagine that will happen. So we'll have a break from it tomorrow. So I'll wrap this up for now, and I'll see you then. Thank you, BookTube.